How's it going, R2 builders? I made my logic displays out of wood and I'm going to show you how to do them. This is going to be a video tutorial on how to make the rear logic display. It's rounded, so it's a little bit more difficult to do. I had to use my router to do it. I also made a router guide for cutting the circle for that piece. So let's get to it. In order to do this project, what we need right here, this is our router. You can see the guide that I made for it. I have a little pin here that I set in here for the circle, so I can just kind of rotate it freely like that. I've got a block of wood that I've already used to work on. I've got a hole right here that's about 9 1/4, I think, to 9 1/2 inches back from the edge. This right here is where I'm going to insert that dowel, which is right there, so I can rotate on this board, and this is where our circle is going to be cut, which is right here. Got our little clamp that we're going to need. Got some blue painter's tape. We're going to use this on the edges to prevent chipping. I've got double-sided tape here. It's carpet tape. This is going to come in real handy when we use our miter saw, because I use a miter saw and I don't want to cut my fingers off, and the double stick tape definitely helps out with that. So let's get started. We've got our router set to where we want it on that board. As you can see here, the piece of wood sticks out just a little bit from that circle, which is perfect for our cutter. We've got it set right here. That way we can finally adjust this as we're going up and down. That way we don't cut anything and you don't go too deep of a cut, which I like to do. That way it makes it a little bit easier. So we're going to turn our router on. Make sure you have on your safety glasses. That way, in case any chips come flying, you don't get hit in your eye. And that's very important because we've only got 1 set of them. We can't see our R2-D2 if we go blind. So here we go. So let's lift this up. What we have here, as you can see, we have a nice round cut. It did splinter a little bit on the sides right here. That's not a big deal because this piece of wood is actually larger than the pieces we're going to be making. I'm going to cut a piece right here about 1 inch down and cut that off, and we could probably make 2 pieces out of this that we cut right here. I've taken our board that we just cut from the center. That line I had, I marked down 1 inch right there. Just made a line that's going all the way across. This is where we're going to cut with our miter saw on the outside line, which is over here, not on this side, because I want to keep all of this right here. We've got our blade off. As you can hear, I'm squeezing that trigger there, which is what we want. We want to line this piece up, make sure our blade is on the outside, which I can see from here. It is. And the reason our blade is off is because I'm centering this using my fingers and I don't want to chop them off. Safety first, people. Safety first. We're going to clamp this down. Check our setting one more time. Looks like it's where we want to be. We can plug our drill in. Now that we've got our piece cut right here, we're going to put some double-sided tape right on this edge right here. I've got a mark right here which is 9/64 in, so that's where we're going to put our 12-degree bevel right there. We've got our double stick tape here, one on each end. We're going to take off the end pieces right there for with the tape. We're going to line this board up, the edge of our drill. Kind of press it down on there and make sure everything is good and straight. We're going to set our 12-degree bevel. We're going to make sure our blade is set up to the outside of the line this time. Let's give that a little tap. This is off because we don't want to cut our fingers off. That way when we're lining this, everything turns out right. Press down, that way you can see where your mark's going to be. Everything looks good. Clamp it down, plug our saw back in. We've got a nice cut like this. Alright, we've got our piece cut. Here's the center of it. I've marked from here to here 13/16 because that's how tall the piece is supposed to be. I've got this line right here, which is 1/16 up from there. So we are going to put our blade down on this side and cut all this off to make this flat. And that's going to be our flat section. With this piece, we can see where our line is. We've got our saw set back to 0, and we're just going to double check that, and it is. And all we have to do is just slowly cut this until we see our piece slowly coming off at that mark. Here we've got our piece cut, and it's a nice flat line, as you can see from looking down that edge. Now that we've got this piece cut, we're going to mount another board right like this on this, and that's just to provide some weight because I've got marked right here. We're going to cut this at 7/64. That's going to complete this front part of the piece. I've got lines also, one here and one here, where we are going to miter this at 22 degrees on each side going this way, and we're going to cut on the outside of that line. Just going to put our piece of tape right there. Rip that off. Again, this is just strictly for weight purposes. That way when we cut this piece right here, it doesn't go flying off anywhere, and it'll stay right where it's at. Make sure that's on there good and secure. So our drill is unplugged. We're going to line this up. When we cut it, we're going to be cutting to the left of the line because any more than that, we'll be taking off parts of our piece that we do want to keep. So I've got that how we want it. Plug our drill back in. So now we've got our piece exactly how we want it, right here. I don't know if that came out a little short. It might be, but since this is just for demonstration purposes, you get the idea. So we're just going to take this off, and that, by putting this on there, I held that piece in so it didn't go flying into the back of the saw here. So now we want to cut this right here, so we're just going to break this off. And by taking this off, we can actually probably use the rest of this right here to just simply make another piece that's exactly the same as this one right here that we're making. So we'll just use this as our spare piece left over. Get a couple pieces of tape on this. One here. One right there all the way across the back. Then one more right here. This will make sure that our tape stays on there and our piece doesn't. So I've got our 3 pieces of tape. Let's just line this up, press this down. Want to make sure everything's flat and flush with the blade, because otherwise it chops it off funny. So And we'll press this down nice and tight. Line up our mark, this time on the outside or on the inside of this line, because this is where our 1/16 of an inch flat surface will be. That's on that plan. I know it gets irritating having to plug the drill back and forth, but when we're doing pieces like this for this wood, it's better to keep our fingers than to not keep them. So let's see how this piece turned out. Tape always works very well. Looking at it, it seems pretty flat going all the way across, which is exactly how we want it. And if it's not, all we have to do is just sand it down a little bit. See how our piece turned out. We're going to set our miter now at 22 degrees for this. Find that. We're going to be chopping this end off right here. On that end. Let's adjust it to the other side. So here we have a nice 22-degree piece, cut exactly how we want it, right like that. We're going to repeat that process with our spare wood, which is right here, and then we're going to get a bigger piece of wood that's thicker, and that'll be for the outside pieces, and we'll cut that. Here's a scrap piece of wood. This is what I use to cut the middle sections for this surround, and by middle section I mean this area right here. It has a 59-degree bevel in it. I reduced that to 31 by how I have to use the miter saw, and that's why it's cut out on the sides like that. This is a round piece which is made the same way that I made for the sides, which is a little bit larger right here, except it's a this here says 8 9/37, which is 8 15/16 round, but I just used the same exact measurement for that and just cut out a larger piece that's just thicker, I should say. Cut off the edges. This is a as I said, 31 degrees. The miter on that will be 23 degrees instead of the 22 from before. And when you put it together, it'll look basically like this. Mine's a little rough, but I took the outsides from when I had this piece right here. I'd cut the sides off, and I had 2 extras of these made, so I just cut right out the middle. And you can kind of feather this a little bit however you want it to fit in your droid. Here's R2 right here. I glued these pieces together on this. These were a bit longer than what they're supposed to be based on how it's made. So along this edge, all I had to do was just cut out a little bit. I didn't route this out. I sanded these down so it was beveled. As you can see the angle on there. I did that. And we pieced it together, glued it together, sanded it down a little bit, and this is how well it'll fit in here. So we take our dome, after some easy sanding, you can see how well this fits. Got a little bit of play in there. What we'll do later on is we'll paint this silver or aluminum using several coats of paint and the sanding process. Drill our holes, and this will be ready to host our logic display.